And welcome into another exciting edition of Locked On 76ers. He's Keith Pompey. I'm Marc Farzetta. Joel Embiid actually said feeling like he was getting back to an MVP level. We'll break that down, as well as whether or not anything has changed for the one-time MVP as far as expectations for this season. Break it all down and more in this edition of Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we do thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Locked On Podcast Network, by the way, the #1 sports podcast network out there, so thank you for your support. This particular episode is brought to you by FanDuel. That's right. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Keith, after the Sixers took it on the chin there against the Atlanta Hawks, they had everyone together for the first time this season. We haven't seen that yet. And I did not see Joel Embiid at his locker. I listened to Nick Nurse. I listened to Tyrese Maxey. I didn't get a chance to listen to Joel Embiid yet. I didn't see it really posted anywhere until earlier this morning. Did he really say he was feeling like he was getting back at an MVP level in the Raptors game and Celtics game before he had the soreness in the non-recently surgically repaired knee? Did that really, those words came out of his mouth? He was feeling like he was getting back at an MVP level?
Yeah, he said that. Yeah, he said he felt like, because I guess, that's the game where, what was it? He had 29 points.
Toronto,
against Toronto. His shot is falling. I think he might have had a couple blocks. So, yeah, he said he was starting the first time he felt like he was getting close to that. Yep.
All right. I love that he feels confident in saying that. But am I crazy to think I don't want that entering his brain at all?
You're not crazy.
Okay. All right. Like I hear that and I'm like, Joe, like if there is any possible way this season Joel Embiid can even get back to something close to an all-star level of play, Keith, I'm doing cartwheels, man. I'm doing backflips. All right. I'll probably get hurt myself, but I'm doing backflips if he can even get something that even is close to an all-star level of play. But the idea of feeling like you're getting back to an MVP level, I think that is so unbelievably dangerous to a guy who's so unbelievably fragile, even in the early goings of this season for him. You're talking about a guy who's played in 7 games. You are talking about a guy who was averaging like a point a minute there against the Toronto Raptors, for instance. He was running the floor. He was going full bore. And the minute he did that, he had to shut it down for 22 days. I don't want that to even be a carrot dangled in front of him to chase this season. That can't be a positive thing to have a guy as banged up as he has been to go after or even think about the MVP award anymore.
Yeah, but I think it's a mentality thing. I think it's one of those things where, you look at that type of mentality is what made him the great player that he is, right? That he was, right? So I think when you come from that standpoint, I hate to say it, but you don't expect anything else to come out of the mouth, right? I mean, and when you look at that game you talked about, it was like 10 for 16. Is also why at times when we look at him and we say, hey, Joel, why is the ball stopping? Why are you taking those early jumpers in the shot clock, when there's other people wide open? Well, that's the mindset that basically enabled him to become MVP. See, the problem a lot of times what we realize is with superstar players, they're so used to playing a certain way, like for most of their career, that it takes a special type of person to realize sometimes I got to change the way I play, right? And it looks to me that although the 76ers were saying, hey, look, we're going to play a certain style, the ball is going to move, we're going to do this and that. And if you look at some of those games where the ball stuck when Joel got it, it's kind of like or maybe he's not 100 totally ready to adapt and make the changes that the Sixers may need for them to become successful. You know what I mean? So I think that when you hear that, that's what you get.
Look, I love that type of mentality, but he's nowhere near the health capacity to have that mentality. Like, I feel like that at this point can only be detrimental. You want to have that mentality while you're rehabbing, have that mentality. You want to have that mentality while you're playing? No, thank you. Because that's what I think will get him into trouble, trying to reach into that old bag this early in the season when he's not ready for it. And look, the evidence is there. He tried to go full bore against the Raptors. He's running the floor. He's trying to show a little spring in his step. He looked good. He looked great in that game. But then 22 days later, he plays his next game. And we're even at a point now, Keith, where we're talking about this Raptors game, this Wizards game tonight. And he's not even supposed to play in that game. Like, this isn't a back-to-back. So it feels like there's a shift in Joel Embiid, not necessarily in his play, but his availability, where it's, all right, we got to be careful about back-to-backs too. We got to be careful if this guy could play more than 2 games a week even. That seems to be a shift in what the expectations are with Joel Embiid at this point.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, you look at it and before he even suffered the right knee injury, it was one of those things where you look at it and you said to yourself, like, it's not just back-to-backs. He's not going to play any games with less than 2 days in between. So if they play on a Monday, they play on a Wednesday, he ain't playing that game. So if he plays on a Monday, he has to take off Tuesday and Wednesday, and then he'll probably be ready to come back on Thursday. So that's what they're dealing with right now. And you know, it's kind of crazy because, you know, we looked at it beforehand and it was trending this way for a while, you know what I mean? Because he wasn't playing back-to-back for a while and he always needed some days of rest. But yeah, it's tough. The hard part is when you look at it, though, we're talking about not just for this season, but can you imagine? And I know we're not talking about this as now, but he still has 3 more years left on his contract after this season. And you know, we're talking about a guy who played 1 game after missing 22 days, and then he's taking off the next one. But yet and still, you still got 3 years after this one on his contract.
And we're also talking about a guy who has a back-to-back coming up here later this week, and then also has a back-to-back coming up in, I believe it's 2 weeks, when they go from New York against the Knicks to at home against the Dallas Mavericks. So
it ain't
2 back-to-back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, for me, it's a double-edged sword. I'm certainly not on the fence. I don't want him thinking about this.
But we talked about this last week, remember? We basically talked about this, that he wasn't going to play. Like,
yeah.
I think he'll play against the Golden State Warriors and the Lakers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the thing that is concerning for me is exactly what you just talked about, the 3 more years after this year. Like, it ain't there anymore. Even if he has the talent in him, he's not going to be healthy long enough to truly compete for an MVP award. And as much as I'd love to see it here, I'd love to see Tyrese Maxey win an MVP while I'm at it, you know? But there comes a point where I think you have to realize where you are in your career. And Joel Embiid needs to realize where he is right now in his career. And it's not about getting better. It's not about being dominant. It's about being healthy. And I feel as if he reaches for dominance again, he's going to get himself into trouble and trying to do way too much with a body that just won't allow him to do it. And we've talked about a guy like Eric Gordon in the past, and I'm not comparing a 6th man of the year to an MVP by any means, but I am comparing an aging, talented player, realizing what's going to make them the best version of an NBA player at this point in their career going forward. And Joel Embiid, if you can get a game like he had against the Raptors occasionally where he's running the floor and he looked good and all that stuff, great. But I don't think by any means that's going to become the norm for him at any point, whether it's this year coming back from the 1 knee injury or it's next year being a year removed from another knee surgery. He needs to realize the stage of his career that he's in right now. And hearing him talk about an MVP level, like I wish I was encouraged by that, but to me, I take that more detrimental than anything else. And I know that sounds unfortunate. That might sound negative to people, but I want the best version you could have of Joel Embiid going forward. And the MVP thing, that's just not him anymore. You might get that for a game or two, but I don't think you're going to get that over any long period of time, especially not a 65 game period of time throughout a season that would even qualify him for the award. That's where I'm at mentally now with Joel Embiid. Now, I did see yesterday on ESPN, they talked a lot about Tyrese Maxey and sort of this Maxey Sixers takeover, face of the organization and all that. I don't want to get into that as much as I just want to get into his impact on this roster going forward. We'll talk about Tyrese Maxey when we come back. This is Locked On 76ers, the Locked On Sixers YouTube channel. Back after this. And hey, let me tell you right now about FanDuel. Yeah, that's right. FanDuel. Hope you guys are taking advantage of all FanDuel has to offer right now. FanDuel keeps every game that much more exciting, whether it's your NBA game, whether it's your NFL game, as the NFL Sundays are moving faster and faster week after week. With FanDuel, you can place bets on live action. Every drive, every moment, every swing, every highlight moment, FanDuel has you covered. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, defense tightens up, whatever it might be. Momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment with live spreads, money lines that adjust instantly, player props, update as guys are heating up right in front of your very eyes as all of it unfolds. You can bet next touchdown scores. You can bet drive results, totals, and so much more with FanDuel. Keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action, this season, FanDuel has you covered. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. Download the FanDuel app. Place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Tyrese Maxey, I expected to take a major step forward this year, Keith. Just granted what was around him, being healthy, wasn't healthy. Last year, they obviously ended up shutting him down. There seemed to be a long period there where he was still dealing with the finger injury, and he became an extreme volume shooter last year. This year, the volume is still, up there, to say the absolute least, granted what's been around him for most of the season. But he's converting these shots. He's third in the league in scoring. I think still third in the league in made three-point attempts. That didn't show, unfortunately, against the Hawks, where he was just 2 for 13. But all in all, I just continue to be impressed by the responsibility Tyrese Maxey not only wants to put on his plate, but the responsibility Tyrese Maxey seems to be flourishing in this year.
Oh, no doubt. It's a lot of responsibility, and it's really showing. And it's one of these things where we look at him, and you see how he has taken over. And this is nothing new. Like we talked about this before. I think now a lot of the national pundits are starting to get onto it after he scored the last 44-point performance in the loss that they had to the Hawks. But when you look at it, I mean, he's having a superb season. When we talk about a guy who's being a leader, but also having to will his team to win, when we talk about that, right now, Luka Doncic has 5 40-point performances. Tyrese Maxey is second in the NBA with 4, and Donovan Mitchell is third, right? And if you would have said a year ago that, when you thought of it, you wouldn't have Tyrese Maxey in that list. Maybe you would have had like Kevin Durant or somebody else. But now you see it, and, the Tyrese Maxey stuff is real. I mean, you were looking at it like, this guy is a legit, not only the face of the franchise, but he's a legit lethal scorer. Like he's in the name in the same sentence as Luka, Donovan Mitchell, Steph Curry, all these guys for this particular season. So, you got to take your hats off to Tyrese.
Tyrese Maxey for a long time to me seemed to be a player that needed kind of that little extra push. Like, I don't think he ever really lacked motivation, but I think he needed that kind of blessing from a head coach or Joel Embiid to be like, no, you take this, or a James Harden, no, you take this, that kind of thing. So this year would be the most extreme version of that. Like I remember a game or a stretch run during his rookie season where Joel Embiid was out, I think, with COVID and missed like 9 games, and Tyrese Maxey absolutely took over in that offense. And then Joel Embiid came back, and you would expect him to take a step back, but he was really a shell of what he was when Joel Embiid was out of the lineup. And it just kind of took, obviously, confidence. It took improving. It took a lot of that to really get Tyrese Maxey going again. And then this year, he's obviously asked to take the biggest step forward that he's ever taken in his NBA career, to be the guy on this franchise and this really be his team. Nick Nurse talked about how he needed to see him, shoot more than the one shot that he got off and missed in that one game. Since then, I feel like you have seen kind of this new or rediscovered version of Tyrese Maxey, where it's like, nope, this solidifies it. My team right now. I don't know when these other guys are going to be available. When they are, great. When they're not, it's got to be me. And when they're back, it's still got to be me. He has taken that, and he has really flourished. And look, I know I referenced, ESPN really talking about him yesterday because of the 44-point game. Watching him every night, Keith, 44 points was great, and it wasn't at the volume. It wasn't like 40 shots for 44 points. I think he took 28. But I wasn't even that impressed. The fourth quarter was great. First half was rough. Fourth quarter, he was great. Overtime, he was great for the most part. Yes, he missed the foul shots and all that. But I was more impressed by what he did really in the second half of that game than what he did throughout the entire game. So the 44 points to me, I know, grabbed headlines, but I'm like, this wasn't even close to his best performance of the season.
No, he struggled for 3 quarters. I mean, they did a phenomenal job, to me, defending him for 3 quarters. A lot of that had to do with, who he was on the floor with. I felt like, they were able to, blitz him a little bit. They were able to, basically more so than blitzing them, they just had length, and they couldn't get them off of, switches. They couldn't set screens for him. But, the thing is, though, the one thing is about him is that, he was shooting the ball horribly, but he kept going. He kept attacking. And then there was one time when he made a 3-pointer, and he just, in the fourth quarter, he just looked up to the heavens and was like, oh, thank you, right? So, but to me, that was one of those things that you like seeing, that, not the fact that he did that, but the fact that he kept trying. He kept doing that. Like, he didn't give up. He didn't quit. Sometimes you just say, hey, it's not my night. We're getting blown out. We're just going to, just try to chill. But when you talk about the shot attempts that he had since that one game, Tyrese has been attempting, he's been attempting a lot of shots. Now, he did have 2 games where he didn't really shoot the ball a lot, right? But in those 2 games, it was kind of like one was 15 shots, the other one was 16. I'm talking about comparable what he does. But one of them was a kind of like a blowout victory over Brooklyn. And then the one before that was a blowout loss to Orlando. But aside from that, he had 30 shots, 23 shots, and 31 shot attempts. And, unfortunately for him and unfortunately for the Sixers, that's what they need out of him. You can't be passive. Now, here's the one thing. When we talk about a different mentality, that night that he shot 0 for 14, 8 for 14. He was 0 for 1 in the fourth quarter in that loss to Toronto. I think, sometimes it's one of those things where I can tell you that you need to shoot more, but until you experience what happens when you don't, you won't totally get it. And I felt like he experienced it, knowing that, man, if I'd have shot the ball more, we probably would have won this game. So I think that's what kind of changed the mentality, because, he thought that he was making the right play by distributing the rock, which on most teams is the right play. But the way that this roster is configured right now with the injuries and all this other stuff, he has to always be the alpha dog. He always has to be the lead dog in an attack mode.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. By the way, it was 4 for 31 from the floor against the Atlanta Hawks, not 28. I thought he had shot 28. And yeah, the game you just referenced there was 8 for 14 against Toronto, only 24 points, no points in the fourth quarter. The next night, in the overtime win against the Bucks. That was the second leg of a back-to-back. He dropped 54 points. That was the game that I think obviously not only impressed me the most, but impressed most people when it came to Tyrese Maxey. The other thing that when you're looking at Tyrese Maxey this year, just overall, he is fourth in the league right now in three-pointers made. He's third in the league in scoring right now overall. And one of the things that is most impressive about his game, and I realize he is playing more minutes, it's the assists. He is averaging more assists than he ever has in his career, 7.6 assists on the season. His previous high was 6.2 2 years ago. Our big request, if we could draw up a request for Tyrese Maxey going into last offseason, was seeing the floor better, setting up your teammates. Look, I know the minutes are up there as well. He's playing 3 more minutes per game than he ever has in his career. He is still doing, I think, a fantastic job of not only being the alpha dog, but also understanding that those guys around him, and it's not always Paul George, obviously, it's not always Joel Embiid, but finding guys around him to knock down that bucket as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and that's what it is. But it's like you got to find them. But also, I think that it always has to start out with you attacking and then doing that later. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's where Quentin Grimes and Jared McCain actually are vital for them. Two guys who can knock shots. Another guy, he doesn't play a lot because he's older, is Eric Gordon. And maybe he may lose a lot in mobility on the defensive end, but he's also a guy that that if Maxey's rolling and he kicks the ball out to EG, you have confidence that he's going to knock down that shot. You know what I mean? He's going to bury that shot. So those are the things. Yeah.
All right. When we come back, Wizards tonight, who will be available? We'll break it down when we return. This is Locked On 76ers on the Locked On Sixers YouTube channel. Like and subscribe back after this. And now it's time to tell you about PrizePicks. Hopefully you guys have downloaded PrizePicks to your phone and you're having yourself a great time with PrizePicks. It's so much fun to get in on everything when it comes to PrizePicks. Holiday season upon us. Best times for sports. We're talking about bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening all at once. And while you're making choices in life, how about you make some choices on PrizePicks and make yourself some money? PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stat projections. Lock in your lineup and you're in the game. It's just that simple. It's just that fast. It's just that easy. And it is available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. PrizePicks has added an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule. Creating a lineup takes less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. It is awesome. You can choose from a huge range of unique stats, fantasy score, field goals, attempts, also free throws made, turnovers, whatever fits your strategy. Download the PrizePicks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code LOCKEDONNBA for at least $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Sixers, Wizards tonight, South Philadelphia, 7 o'clock tip-off. Who will be available, Keith Pompey?
Paul George is questionable, so you'll figure that out later on, I guess, right?
Yeah.
VJ Edgecombe is playing. Andre Drummond is questionable. Kelly Oubre and Trendon Watford is still out, and as we talked about earlier, Joel Embiid is out again as well.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to not so much Joel Embiid, but when it comes to VJ Edgecombe. He was on a minute restriction the other night as well. What do you think has happened with VJ Edgecombe since an amazing first couple of games? Is this the earliest rookie wall you've ever seen? What is it about VJ Edgecombe that doesn't have him seeing the same success as we saw very early this season?
I think it was an early rookie wall. I feel like, he was playing too many minutes. But I also feel like it's a combination of a rookie wall, and it's also a combination of the 76ers were trying to get Joel Embiid going. And basically them getting him going basically stood in the way of what VJ Edgecombe was trying to do. You know what I mean? So and it's like it is what it is. Like, here's the thing. You got to look at it two different ways. If you're trying to win a championship right now, you got to see what you have in Joel Embiid. You got to see what you got in Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid and Paul George. Because the thing is, the VJ Edgecombe is a great player, but when you have two max players, you got to decide, are they capable enough of helping you win in a championship? So that has to be the number one priority. The problem is, if they struggle and if stuff goes well, and then you look and you see what VJ Edgecombe did in the first game of the season, in a couple other games, when he was a priority in the offense, then you start to say, we may have a little problem here. But I feel like that was going on. It's like, when you look at a VJ Edgecombe type of player, when Joel and Paul George are not the focal point, he's thriving along next to Maxey. He has the height. He does a lot of other things. He can play the defense. Because let's face it, if Maxey had weakness, it's on the defensive end, right?
Sure.
But when you have Joel Embiid out there and you have PG out there and they become more of a focal point, Edgecombe role is less than what Quentin Grimes is, because Quentin Grimes can fit in with that lineup because he's a very good shooter, right? So he can knock down some shots and he can do some other things. Whereas we look at Edgecombe more as a slasher. He does all this, but then you also have Joel Embiid playing in the perimeter. So it's kind of sort of like is impeding his drives to the lane, doing a lot of other things. So yes, he was fatigued, but I also think playing alongside those guys until they got to figure it out. They got to figure out what they got with the big three, and then you got to implement Grimes to keep him going. But I will say this. In the last game that he played, I saw a bounce. I saw some other things that I hadn't seen in a while before Joel was injured.
Fair enough. Hopefully we'll see some of that again tonight against the Wizards. Keith Pompey will be covering it all. Your 76ers beat writer. Make sure you guys are reading Keith Pompey on Inquirer.com. We'll be back with you guys to break it down further tomorrow. Make sure you like and subscribe on Locked On 76ers. And for you NBA fantasy basketball players out there, make sure you guys are paying attention to our friend Josh Lloyd, who breaks it all down on Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now the number one sports podcast network out there. For Keith Pompey, I'm Marc Farzetta. This has been Locked On 76ers. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Back with you guys tomorrow. See you then.